Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com with this week's episode of the Market Monday. This week we're going to focus on Modern Horizons. So we've had the week 0 results on MTGO. That has been legal before Paper has had access to these cards, and there's actually been a major tournament on MTGO, so we'll take a look at that in a second. But first, I just want to focus on the value of Modern Horizons and give my opinions on where I think things are going to settle once we get the mass openings that are going to happen this week due to the set going fully on sale. So we've just had the pre-release supply enter into the mix, but now the distributors are going to be shipping out the full release, meaning that a lot of stores are going to have a ton of these available to the mass box openers and customers, and we're going to see the market become saturated. However, there's good news about this set. It does seem to be more impactful than most people thought for the modern format. We joked that this was Commander Horizons because looking over the set, we knew a bunch of cards were going to be very good in Commander, like Urza, Lord High Artificer, and the First Sliver, which continue to be the most expensive card, but it was quite lackluster in the scope of things beyond like the lands, the Horizon lands, for the modern format. However, that has proven not to be true, as many of these cards did see play in this Week 1 tournament for MTGO, and there was one deck that completely was revamped, or a deck we haven't seen for quite some time, that has been pushed over the top and had by far the best results in that tournament. So we'll talk about it in one second, but let's go ahead and look at the prices for these cards. So we have Urza, Lord High Artificer, and the First Sliver still holding the highest slot. We have cards like Force of Negation, which had a so-so showing. There were decks that were playing Force of Negation, but that one has gone up substantially, up $9 today, and up $6 from the first of the week. And we have some of the other mythics like Ren and Six doing quite well. And Prismatic Vista, this card would actually perform quite well in Modern. It was only really a one-of, but just the fact that Modern is using this, and of course Commander is using this card, is going to mean that there's going to be a lot more demand than first anticipated for the Prismatic Vista. And it's actually quite... It's kind of cool that this is the land that has the highest price at the moment. So a couple weeks ago, I made the prediction that this was the perfect set, the Modern Horizons, because it did have highly sought after lands that were going to be heavily played in both Commander and Modern. Some people disagreed with that assessment, but it looks like that is turning out to be the case, as the lands next to the cards that are seeing a ton of play in both Commander and in Modern, they're the ones that are by far the most in-demand card here, and the prices have gone up and shown that. So we have the Fiery Islet going up to $26, up $4 today, and $1.70 from the start of the week. Sunbaked Canyon really going up $7 in a day, mainly due to a bunch of the red decks that are running this in. A bunch of decks are using these lands as cantrips, so they're running them just for the single color and then cracking them away later on when they need a card. So it's very important for aggressive decks to have that option. And we saw that with Horizon Canopy for quite some time. So it puzzled me that people thought these lands weren't going to be that played in Commander or in Modern. But yeah, I've played a bunch of aggro decks myself. I remember when Soul Sisters was new, a lot of people were running Horizon Canopy and Soul Sisters because it was so important to crack a land later on for gas. So we even have like cards like Echo of the Eons that have stabilized off. They're going down a little bit, but these cards I think are going to stabilize quite quickly. This still seems like a card that could definitely see play in Modern. The power level is there, especially if you can somehow get this in the graveyard for the flashback. Some of the Commander cards are starting to go down, like the Yawgmoth Thran Physician, which is expected. Once the Commander players get these particular copies, it's going to take a while for the demand to it'll be years down the road before there will be demand from Commander players to make up for the supply. So the cards that I expect to be going up in the short term will be the cards that hit the Modern format. And like I said before, there have been some goodies here. So let's go ahead and take a look at those particular cards. So we go over to the decks and metagame. You can find this gem of a tournament that was played on the 8th, which was this Modern Challenge. So if we go over this Modern Challenge and expand the decks here, we'll just kind of go down and see what cards were actually used from this tournament from Modern Horizons. So first of all, the Eldrazi Tron that went 7-0. I don't know who won this tournament with the challenge, if it was just a 7-round tournament. I can't remember how modern challenges work. I haven't played MTGO in a long time, so someone in the comment section can clear this up. But this was one of the 7-0 decks, and I didn't see any cards from Modern Horizons in this particular deck. This has been the big breakout deck from War of the Spark, is Karn the Great Creator with the Mycosynth Lattice. A lot of people are calling for the banning of Karn because it's just so backbreaking in the format. There are Prison decks running this. There are Eldrazi decks running this. There are Lantern Control decks running this. And there's even Eggshells that are running Karn the Great Creator and just stalling until you can get Karn with Mycosynth Lattice. One of the good things about Karn is it's a natural Stony Silence as well against your opponents. So it's very, very powerful in the format. But this one was one of the 7-0 finishes that I do not believe had any cards from Modern Horizons. So if we actually go down, though, it's starting to paint a different picture. This particular one was this Esper Death Shadow was using a 1 of Silent Clearing, which is a land that can cantrip. You don't want to be running too many of these in a 3-color deck because you're going to really start to dish off a lot of damage through your fetch lands, through your shock lands, and then lands that have to tap and pay 1 life every time they tap. So a lot of these decks, this has been the trend. It's not like some of the decks in the past that have used Horizon Canopy as 4-ofs. They tended to come in 1s and 2s. There were a few decks that ran 3. But the other breakout card from this particular one was Ranger Captain of Eos. It seems to be a lot easier than running the other Ranger of Eos for the Double Death Shadow. I mean, this is an archetype that's been around before, is this Esper. They ran Ranger of Eos before to grab 2 Death Shadows, but apparently just a 3/3 for 3 has a little bit more of an impact just getting the 1 Death Shadow and then being able to sacrifice your Ranger so your opponent can't cast non-creature spells this turn to really set up a very lethal turn with cards like Hermog Angler and the Death Shadow swing in for lethal. Teferi's in this deck. Teferi is a very common deck just to chuck in any deck that runs blue and white in this particular format because it's a very powerful card. But those were kind of the cards that were run in from the Modern Horizons. I was wrong about Ranger Captain of Eos. I just thought that people that wanted to play it would just prefer the 1 more mana to get 2 of them. But obviously that's not the case. It's a body that comes out on curve a lot easier and does get you that 1. So I don't think there's anything over in the sideboard from the Modern Horizons, so let's move on. So here's the big winner out of this week. This is called the Hogak, however you say it, Hogak Bridgevine. There were tons of these. So you're going to see there's a few 7-0s, a ton of 6-1s, and even more 5-2 finishes. In fact, I think if you add up all the decks that were in this tournament with the high finishes, this is over 50% of the meta with this particular deck. So this one has a couple of options. Not all of them run all of these particular cards, but they seem to be all of them running this Vengevine, the Bridge from Below, the Altar of Dementia, and the Hogak Horizon Necropolis. So this card is a real deal. How this deck works is you want to get a Bridge from Below in the graveyard as quickly as possible that spawns the 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, and then you can tap those for the Convoke as well as dredge any other cards from your graveyard to get out an 8/8 Trampler. This card is actually quite impactful in the format right now because it dodges like Abrupt Decay, it dodges Fatal Push, and it dodges Lightning Bolt. Those are the premier removal spells because most things like Death Shadow get killed by a Fatal Push. Many of the like Tarmogoyfs, so your typical big fat creatures that come out early in the format typically do die to like the Fatal Bushes and the Lightning Bolts and whatnot. And this is a card that really does dodge them. I mean, that was one of the big things with Tasigur for a while. The Tasigur dodged Fatal Push, and the higher mana cost was actually a boon. But even the Delve is quite easy. I mean, you do have to have the Convoke to pay for the colored portion of the mana, and that's where Bridge from Below comes into play. Getting those 2/2 zombie creature tokens can easily tap to suffice for the 8/8 Trampler. So if they actually take care of these with like a Path to Exile or another just destroy type spell, this can be cast from the graveyard, and so it's very easy to cast back again if you have a renewable resource like the Bridge from Below. So what makes this deck very good too is it is tough to really hate out even with graveyard hate because a lot of these cards can just become beaters by themselves. And I mean, it's a very efficient deck at getting these sort of combos out quickly. By the time like a Rest in Peace is cast, there could possibly be a flood of 2/2 zombies or even a Risen Necropolis already out. So we can actually go down to the next list, same thing. It's a very similar deck as the first one. And yeah, just a lot of cards here with the Altar of Dementia and the Carrion Feeder and the Arisen Necropolis from the Modern Horizons. So these ones have already adjusted in price. I expect this one to go up even more because Card Kingdoms raised their buy list for this particular card. They were selling it for 16 at the start of the day, and they're already selling it for 36, I believe. 35.99 is what Card Kingdom is selling it for. So it's had over a double up with just one day after these results have come out. So this card is really taking off. The same can be said for the Altar of Dementia. This card is starting to go up. It's had quite a few printings with Conspiracy, and then it existed, I believe, in Chronicles is the other one it existed in, and now in this set. But it seems like the demand definitely will outstretch the supply, at least for the first couple weeks for the Modern Horizons. And Bridge from Below, it's gone crazy. This was just out of Ultimate Masters, so this can actually pump some more value into Ultimate Masters, looking like a pretty good set at this point. We have the Humans, and this one also was running the Ranger Captain of Eos as a 2 of. This slot is typically, I don't know if one's going to hold. I wonder how good the sacrifice it so your opponent can't cast non-creature spells this turn is for the format. And if they're running it over you have the one that looks at top 4 cards of your library, and you can get a converted mana cost creature from M19. There's that option. There's plenty of options for what this particular card does, but it seems like the combination of between the utility of this being able to sacrifice it and the 3/3 body for 3 is what's pushed this over the top and made this actually more playable than its counterparts. So the Humans is still preferring to go Horizon Canopies. That's why it's very puzzling to me that Horizon Canopies is dipped in the week, because it just doesn't make sense to me why, like, all the lands that were printed in this set aren't like shoving out of Horizon Canopy out of any slots. Most of the decks that have run Horizon Canopies in the past, like Bogles or Humans, they want white-green as their fast mana. They don't want any other combination of colors for this particular effect. So kind of funny. It might be a good time to get back in on Horizon Canopies. They were going up anyway due to the lack of supply from what Iconic Masters really brought into the mix. And you see they did have this dip, but yeah, now I'm expecting this to recover. I think it's just people thinking that these new lands are going to push it out, but it absolutely does not. I mean, it's still the only way to get a green-white version of this card. Modern Horizons did not print this land, so again, I expect a little bit of a rebound for this card. Still played out as a 4 of in Humans and a 4 of in Bogles most of the time. So looking through these, I don't see any other big standout cards from Modern Horizons. We have Mono Red Phoenix. Mono Red Phoenix, I believe, did have, the Sunbaked Canyon. This card has gone up quite substantially in the past couple days. I think it was up $8, so it's up to $20, and it was all the way down to 12 pre-selling at one point. Not quite up to, over $20 now is what it looks like the Sunbaked Canyon is. And of course, they're just going to run the cheaper of the red options. This is just a deck that wants to be able to cycle away a land. And so you can take away that white mana source and it doesn't do anything. They don't use the white mana source. They're just using this as a red land to cantrip away when they're ready to draw more gas. So this is just your Mono Red Phoenix. This deck is very, very popular. It's been popular since the Arclight Phoenix was released. And it is not going anywhere. Still a very, very quick, efficient deck, hard to shut down. And that was the one card is just the land, which of course we expected. That's why I continue to say that Modern Horizons was a very good set. It was very smart. What pushed it over the top is when they included those lands. I knew it was going to be a great set, a knock out of the park as far as something that would have some long-term value. So it's good to see that the decks are incorporating those lands, and yeah, it's gonna hold its value for quite some time just because of those. Again, supply is gonna be a big issue, but it should still be able to keep around its quote-unquote MSRP, even though Wizards doesn't have an MSRP anymore. I think the $250 a box is going to be quite market pricing and quite relevant for some time after. Of course, you can, get deals, but I mean, that's going to be the going price, I think, six months, a year down the road. All right, so let's go to the Azores Control. Azores Control doesn't seem to have any new things coming from the Modern Horizons. Nope, it doesn't look like I've seen any. Let's check the sideboard. And this one also does not look like it has anything. Narset still seems to be very, very good in the format. I'm actually expecting to see more wheel type effects starting to enter in the mix. If you've noticed, Teferi's Puzzle Box has gone through the roof. Let's just check out Teferi's Puzzle Box. And this is because there was one Modern deck that was running a Narset combo. So the Narset, you have the option to get a Teferi's Puzzle Box with Narset. What this does, your opponent just doesn't draw a card, so they get to draw one card. So at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player puts the cards in his or her hand on the bottom of their library and then draws that many cards. So what this effectively does is it locks out your opponent from having more than one card in their hand because they shuffle their hand into their library and then draw one card because of the Narset. So I'm expecting more of these type of decks to pop up. But again, we're talking about Modern Horizons today. That's kind of the my analysis for Teferi's Puzzle Blocks. I'm also thinking that Narset decks for Oathbreaker are starting to have an effect on Teferi's Puzzle Blocks with people building Narset. Cards like Days Undoing I'm expecting to go up in value, or any sort of blue wheel effect, which there are plenty of them. I'm thinking you're going to start going up. Keep your eye on cards like the Gyreet Sanitarium for Narset. So let's pull up Gyreet Sanitarium. This one's actually pretty neat ability with the Narset if you use it on your opponent's turn. So each player draws a card, then discards a card. If you use this on your opponent's turn, they just discard a card. So keep your eye on that. This is a card that has actually been going up quite well. Actually had a nice little price spike from War of the Spark, but I expect this trajectory to continue. So anyway, just some food for thought as we go over cards. Whoops. Let's go back to that tournament. I just ditched it down. So where were we? We are down to the Narset deck. So there's the Azores Control. Again, nothing really stands out as far as new tech or new cards from this deck. Azores Spirits. Good to see Spirits back in the mix, but I don't think there was anything from the set. We're seeing Silent Clearing. Again, they're using a land that they can just cantrip away. In this case, it just has white, and so they're using the white-black one as it's probably the cheapest one. You might start seeing some Esper Spirits, splashing and Lingering Souls. A lot of times they don't like it because this is an Aether Vial deck. But we've seen Spirits before. It's good to see it have another high finish as 6/1. Spoiler alert, one of the reasons why I am kind of interested in this particular deck is because I went all in on Spellqueller, and that was one of my worst specs right now, as it hasn't really done anything. Actually, looking down from Spellqueller, it does look like there is one Sarah the Benevolent. This is typically where Gideon has been in Spirits before. I'm not actually sold that Sarah is better than Gideon in this particular deck because it is a +2 that you have to give all your flying creatures +1/+1. And of course in Spirits, that's nice. It's nice to have the plus ability with Sarah actually relevant. And probably it's not any more relevant in any other deck than Spirits because they're all... I think what Spirits really needs is another 1-drop to push it over the top. There's not besides the Mausoleum Wanderer, there's not a good Spirit in the 1-drop that's worth playing. And that's kind of tough with an Aether Vial deck. Aether Vial decks, I think, do want a few more 1-drops to really have something to do on that next turn when it gets a counter. However, Gideon with the emblem, I guess it's a plus. I don't know which one would actually work better, but Sarah the Benevolent does mix quite well with the Spirits by at least giving them +1/+1 until in a turn. Too bad it doesn't give Vigilance to then protect Sarah. But creating the 4/4 Angel is quite strong, leaving back a body that then can plus up. And giving the worship effect on this too, when you can immediately +2 and then immediately ultimate Sarah the Benevolent, is probably wins a lot of games with this Spirit deck too. So keep your eye on this to see if it does see more play. There's one in the sideboard too, and then a Gideon in the sideboard, so we can actually check out Gideon. Yeah, if you go with the plus and then get an emblem, that's pretty nifty with Gideon as well. So we'll have to see which one ends up getting the nod more often. So now I have a blue-red control. The only big standout here that was used is this Magmatic Sinkhole. One of the big surprises was there wasn't a lot of blue-red decks running the blue-red Horizon land. So the Fiery Inlet, or Islet, Islet is how you call it, right? I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Someone in the comment section can roast me. Which... Again, I think that they're more concerned about their life total than drawing cards. It's typically is one of the color combinations that's very good at cycling through their cards to begin with, so they don't need another land that actually hurts them in the process. This one is running a Prismatic Vista. This is something that is showing up a ton of. One-of's decks are running these quite frequently, and I guess it's a pretty decent one. Just go get a basic land to play around Blood Moon to begin with, kind of filter through your... it's an Evolving Wilds that comes to play untapped. It's a very, very powerful card. Fetch lands essentially can do the same thing, but when you're running all 4 Scalding Tarns and you want to hit specific lands, maybe it's better than running even another Flooded Strand or going into other fetch lands at that point. So I don't know if these are people who are just testing these Prismatic Vistas out to see how well they work or not, if it's just an anomaly, if they're just going to be dropped for fetch lands again. But this did show up quite frequently in this list of this one-of. Magmatic Sinkhole, this card is just easy to delve. it kills a creature. It's relevant because it kills anglers in the format, so the 5 damage is quite relevant. Also hits planeswalkers, which is super relevant in Modern at the moment with lots of decks running Narset, lots running Teferi, and there are a bunch of pesky planeswalkers like Karn too that are in the mix. So yeah, hitting Karn's probably very relevant as well with the Magmatic Sinkhole. So maybe the foils are something. Let's see what the foil is doing. This actually looks like a pretty decent spec here. Foils have gone up a little bit from their $1.50 low. They're pre-selling for $1, but if this does see a lot of play, like the biggest thing about common foils from Standard is they don't have the best ability to go up in value due to the being able to be redeemed from MTGO. And you can't. You've never been able to redeem these type of sets on MTGO, and I don't think. I mean, someone correct me in the comment section, but I do not believe that Modern Horizons is going to be available for redemption. In the past, master sets have not been available for redemption, and even sets like they've never really put Conspiracies or Battle Bonds, so I guess this is new territory. But in the past, it was only Standard sets that had a redemption, and that's why foil prices were able to stay quite low for paper. Is once foil prices got out of control on paper, then people would just come over to MTGO where no one cares about foils because half of us turn them off anyway because they lag the game, and oftentimes the foils are actually less expensive than the non-foils in MTGO, and then people will pick those up and they'll redeem full foil sets and then saturate the market with the foil ones. So if that's not an option, that's if you look historically back to like Battle Bond, Conspiracy 2, that's why foil commons and uncommons from those sets can hold a high price tag. So this wasn't a special set with one foil in every pack, which was like from master sets in the past. These foil commons are actually quite rare in the scope of things. So I think this is actually a pretty good spec with how many saw play. There are plenty of decks that are running 1-ofs, 2-ofs throughout this list. All right, let's go back to these. I don't think there's anything else in this one. We talked about the Prismatic. We were looking over in the sideboard. There were 2 Force of Negations though in the sideboard. That's where it tends to be, is in the sideboard. It did see a decent amount of lists in these finishes. All right, so let's go on to another Blue-White Control. Nothing really to talk about here. Again, another Vista in the sideboard, and that's about it. There's nothing that was new from these cards. All right, let's go on to Grixis Delver. Grixis Delver had a Sinkhole as well. Other than that, though, it wasn't even using the blue-red lands either, which is interesting. Like, I think maybe Grixis Shadow is where it's going to fit, and maybe we'll come across some of those lists in the future where the Horizon land is going to fit in this particular one. But again, the blue-red decks tend to worry more about their life total at the moment than cycling through those lands, and that was really the only addition here, wasn't one of Magmatic Sinkhole. All right, let's go on to another Bridgevine. So now we're getting the 6/1 Bridgevines. This one's fairly similar. This one's running Dark Blast and Cathartic Reunion. That's the big difference. But the Bridge, the Altar of Dementia, the Arisen Necropolis, all of those in very, very high amounts. We do have like cards like Shenanigans in here. It's got a Dredge on destroying an artifact, but that seems pretty utility. I don't know if that's actually better, the Dredge one, or something like an Ancient Grudge. Maybe that's just a test card. We have another one over here with another Bridgevine. This one is using the Chewer. I actually think that's a better because it does trigger the Bridge from Below a lot easier than a Dredge 1. But very similar list as some of the other finishes, and the mana base is very similar as well. This one is running Hangerback Walker. That's one of the big differences. All right, so here another Bridgevine deck. This one's running a Mindrake with an overload of each player discards 2 cards for just 2 mana. So it's a way for you to discard cards of the Bridge from Belows that are in your hand. I mean, that's typically the slot for the Insolent Neonate. However, Mindrake, this is one of those decks where discarding card out of your own hand is actually pretty good. And when you can get your opponent to discard cards as well for 2 mana, that's right on par, right when you want to be casting it to kind of rip out some cards. I think with the London Mulligan rule, with people being very aggressive, we might actually see this card see more play. It's just another type of card you could actually look at the foils. Quite reasonable at $1.50 for this card being worth something in the future. So keep that on your radar. Over here, again, another Shenanigans in the sideboard, but I don't know. I kind of like the Chewer over the Shenanigans, but this one, Bridgevine is running Shenanigans as well. So I guess we can say that maybe, well, this one's actually, the foil is actually quite expensive. I guess people are anticipating that Dredge with destroying an artifact would be more worthwhile. Yeah, you can keep destroying artifacts every turn, but I don't know if it's where this deck wants to be. However, yeah, the foils are pretty high. Could even go up higher though if it does become a mainstay in this particular deck. So same old. This is very similar. Necrotic Wound in this one, but Bridge from Below is a 4 of, Vengevine 4 of, Alter Dementia 4 of. Another one. So you can see, like I said, about 50% of these decks were the Hogak Bridgevine type strategy, and this one does have Chewers again, and other than that, this one has Shenanigans as well. Yeah, so that one's foil. Definitely keep your eye out for that foil if you can pick them up. So if Humans, this particular Humans doesn't seem like it is running anything noteworthy from the set, just typical old school Humans. Yep. And Neobrand, same thing. I didn't think I saw anything other than the Waterlogged Grove. So Waterlogged Grove is a 3 of in this particular deck. It wants green-blue. It wants ways to cycle through if it needs to. It also is not running, yep, nothing else in the sideboard. So the lands are the only addition. This Tron, I believe, is not running anything even in the sideboard. And nope, so just Tron. Zooburn also was not running anything. This one kind of surprised me because if I think this is where you might want like the white, no, probably not the white-red land because it might just be too awkward just for the Boros Charm. I think they're a little bit heavier on, Nicotl hitting the plains here. So yeah, that's why they're not running the kind of the Horizon Canopy type land for this. And same thing, nothing in the sideboard. So we're going to see more decks. Typically, like, people will still queue up in these tournaments without even picking up cards because Modern typically doesn't change too much from new sets. So this Azores Control is running Winds of Abandon, which is the overload ability to basically Path to Exile everything, which is good in a format that doesn't run a lot of basic lands like the Modern. So it's good to see a 1 of there. I wonder if it's just this is typically like a Terminus slot sometimes. Yeah, because it's very, it's sorcery speed, so you have to do it on your turn, so Terminus is like the same overload cost. I'm wondering why. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't hit your own creatures, but there really isn't a lot in this particular deck. So it might just be a test card. Factor Fiction, that's another one that I was surprised didn't see as much play as it did. Thought it would spawn some Storm decks that were trying out Factor Fictions, but maybe they just didn't do too well in this new very aggressive format. All right, so this one had 2 Prismatic Vistas and not anything else in the sideboard. This is blue-red control, same thing. We don't see any of the lands in the sideboard. We do see a Prismatic Vista and 2 Sinkholes, and we don't even see the force. Oh, yep, there's the 2 forces. That one is in the main in this particular deck. So Grixis Death Shadow. Grixis Death Shadow did not decide. I think it's actually just better to fetch Shock to get out the most bang for your buck for the damage. So it's surprising that this one didn't use the cantrip land. And again, this one did not seem to have anything new from the new set. Another Bridgevine, another Bridgevine, another Bridgevine, and we go down here to another Humans. They didn't have innovation here from the new set, not using anything from the new set. And Is It Phoenix, also not using the land. And this is Pyromancer's Ascension Phoenix, which isn't using any new cards. And I think we find some more Phoenix decks coming down the list here. And we have the Narset as Foretold, or Days Undoing as Foretold deck. Is this running this? What are they called? As For Turns. Yeah, this one's just Days Undoing for here. So, yeah. Narset, Days Undoing. Pretty sweet little combo. Definitely keep your eye on this type of combo to see if it's going to see more play in Modern. Days Undoing is a good one to really look at for going up more. It's a mythic out of Origins. And nothing really too fancy, though, from the new set. So, overall, there's the Storm one here. This Storm did not run. I was wondering if Factor Fiction would just replace Gifts Ungiven. This deck didn't go with it. This one did go with the Aria of Flame, though. And this one also ran the 2 of the Fire Islets. So, yeah, that's pretty neat, at least for showcasing somewhere. Commander's still going to strip out a bunch of these lands. I think these lands are very, very good for Modern. They just need to find a good place for them. Storm does look a lot more interesting with this particular because it is a way for them to cycle through a card, which I do think is relevant for the Storm deck because sometimes they do kind of flood out, and it gives another option to get back in it. So it's kind of neat that they did run the Aria of Flame. I don't know if it's just a test card. People typically do just throw in a couple cards here and there to see how they work in traditional shells. Tesserator, again, nothing that is new in this particular deck. This has existed before. Kind of neat to see this kind of archetype actually do decently well at a 5-2 finish. Here we have the Shadow of Assumptions, though, which is a new card, which target opponent reveals their hand, discards all colorless cards, and target opponent reveals their hand, discards all multicolor cards. So Shadow of Assumptions is a pretty good sideboard card because it can hit Tron quite substantially. But that's that. That's the cards that saw play out of the Modern Horizons. Let's just check back one more time. Kind of getting a long video here with the, if we go back, actually over here, that's what I was looking for, was the most played cards out of the format. If you go to the sideboard, you're seeing it's all from the Urza Necropolis deck. Every single one of them is in there. So it just dominated the format. And probably here to stay. I don't think that a deck can do something like this as a fluke. I think the last time we saw something like this happen was the Arclight Phoenix. The new card just took over the format. There are so many different versions, though. It seems like this one is very similar. Every version is running the same shell, mainly the same 60 cards. Not even a lot of variance in the 75 cards. When you include the sideboard. So that's the big winner out of it. So where do I expect that card to settle? I think that 25 to 30 bucks for a rare is probably about as high up as a card can go in this particular set. There is so much supply that is going to be added to the mix for let's go special modern. For Modern Horizons, we've only seen the pre-release supply and people that are cheating the system right now and somehow got their supply earlier. But the main supply, so how it happens right now in this day and age of supply for, and why we're going to see sets, especially if you actually look at War of the Spark, how it's been able to sustain its price a little bit higher, is Wizards has been releasing the product slower. I think that's their strategy. I think their strategy is to put a little bit of shortage on the supply of cards so that prices don't get completely just crash overnight, that people get access to thousands upon thousands of products. And, they want to create a bit of an artificial shortage so that the prices stay high, that then makes people want to continue to buy packs because it's worth it. They're disincentivizing going and buying singles at the moment because of the supply is short comparatively where it should be, or where it will eventually end up, which I don't know if that's a good strat or a bad strat for Wizards. But obviously that's been the way they've been handling, because War of the Spark, there just wasn't a lot of product. Yes, it was sold like crazy, but I have a hard time believing that it was both A, sold way more than other set, and B, there was no supply shortage. I bet they did a little bit of both. In fact, I think that's how they've handled everything from Dominaria forward, is they've done it in these initial ways. They give stores the what's called the pre-release allotment, which usually just covers the pre-release and price support, and then they give the release date allotment, which is usually about the same amount of supply as the pre-release, and then the week after that, then stores get the option to buy a lot more product, but I still think that it's a lot shorter than just completely opening up the market for people to buy as many as they want, like they've done in sets of the past. And that's why these sort of Dominaria forward sets have been able to hold their value a lot better than sets before Dominaria. So I think Modern Horizons is going to follow the same pattern. What we're seeing right now is mainly just the pre-release supply. Stores have still not received all of their release supply, like we haven't. Like our release supply will be here on Wednesday, and then after that, then we get the opportunity to buy even more. So yeah, so expect the supply to really start to fulfill a bunch of these cards that don't have the highest demand, that didn't see a lot of play. So cards like the Sword of Truth and Justice, I think these type of cards are going to get hit hard. We had a lot of rebounding in some cards that just didn't make sense because I didn't see where they were seeing play at all. Just still people picking them up for Commander, but I mean, mainly the big movers were cards, the Ranger, the Altar. Those are the cards been going up. Flusterstorm's getting killed though, because surprise, surprise, it actually didn't see a lot of play in any of these lists. It's just not the same card that it is in Legacy. It's a must in Legacy just with how quick the format is, however, and how instant and sorcery centric the format is, whereas Modern does seem to have a good mix of artifacts, good mix of creatures, good mix of a lot of decks going different angles than just casting a bunch of instants or sorceries. So yeah, I expect a bunch of these cards just to continue to get crushed because the value has to go somewhere, and there's going to be a ton of demand for cards like the Arisen Acropolis and all these type of lands. I hope you enjoyed this video. It gives an overview of cards from Modern Horizons. We'll keep looking at this. If you're a fan of the more financial content, be sure to check out my second channel over at the Rogue Market. Is 100% focused on finance. You won't see any booster box openings or deck techs or anything like that, or rant videos. It is strictly finance. So if you're here for the finance content, highly suggest you check out the Rogue Market. We'll have a bunch of videos this week that will be posted as far as financial Magic the Gathering videos. Hope you enjoy this video. This has been Kevin with Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.